This is a review of the LEGO 7858 remote-controlled points right 12 volt and 7859 remote-controlled points left 12 volt. To be clear, these are two separate sets, but they are nearly identical. The only difference is that 7858 includes a right point base and 7859 includes a left point base. 7858 and 7859 were both released in 1980 as expansion sets for your 12 volt layout. Like most other supplemental sets, they were continued until nearly the end of the era. Production stopped somewhere between 1989 and 1993. These remotely operated points are key components of an advanced 12 volt layout, and a 7858 and 7859 function the exact same as a 7856, which includes a left and right manual point, upgraded with 2 copies of 7863, which includes parts to upgrade a single manual point to an electric one. I already released reviews of 7856 and 7863, and if you've already watched both of those reviews, your time may be better spent watching one of my other videos, since I will be covering a lot of the same stuff as those reviews, some of which is reused script. Both 7858 and 7859 include the exact parts that were included in 7863, which are the point motor, the brick with the point indicator pattern, the point remote, a wire, and 2 light gray plates. Then, in addition, the 7858 and 7859 also include the point base right here, and then 3 sleepers and the plates for the underside of the point base. The points are similar to 9 volt and RC ones. The small derailleur part, which is right here, that can move using this the black lever here to direct the train into either the through position, where it will just go straight through, or the diverging track, where if it's pushed towards the middle of the point, then it will go to the diverging track on the side. And then that movement of the lever is controlled by the point motor. So this point motor looks almost exactly the same as a manual point motor from 7856, but it does have a plug hole on this end, and that's for a wire because you can activate it from the transformer remote. The axle on the top turns a plastic disc, which is aligned so that the hole on the bottom moves along a little slot. So this axle can turn here, and then on the bottom, maybe you can hopefully see that glare. So there's a slot right at the bottom here, and then there's a hole, like a cutout in the disc, because that axle turns a disc, and then when that disc turns, there's a hole that moves along the slot, so it will move from either position, either side, and then that will control the movement of the black derailleur lever. So magnets on either side of the disc ensure that once it hits one position, it won't turn any farther. So if I put this point indicator brick, you can see if I just push it a little bit, it will flip automatically to the other position. When current is applied to a point motor, I believe it activates one of 2 electromagnets to pull the disc either way, and then therefore will flip the point. To attach a point motor to the point base, you have to slide the black lever of the point to either side, and then for the point motor, you have to make sure that it will be aligned once you attach it. So if the lever is to the left side, then you have to also make sure that the hole is going to be on the left side when you attach it. So right now, the hole is on the right, which means when I flip it over, it will be on the left. So I can just, if everything's lined up correctly, you can just push it on and then it will click. And then now if I turn this, you can see the derailleur is moving right there. So the black lever will just fit right into that slot if it's aligned correctly. And then the next step is to put the point indicator brick on there. So this will just fit onto the axle, and then how it's supposed to be aligned is that when the derailleur is to the diverging position, you want the wider side with the circle and the circle and line going through it, and then if you flip it, then it should have the narrower side with the white rectangle on it facing the oncoming track. Because of the magnets in the point motors, the brick will be pulled towards the position it's closer to. Therefore, similar to 9 volt and RC points, if a train passes the point from the track that the derailleur is not set to, the magnet will pull the derailleur back to its original position once the train passes. So for example, if I flip it to the diverging position and I have a train coming from the main track, it can just go through here because this magnet the derailleur can move and the magnet will just push the derailleur back to its position, back to the position that it is supposed to be in once the train passes. Another aspect of the point is the metal conducting part. Unlike 9 volt points, the 12 volt ones just have all tracks active when they're plugged in. Supplying current from one track provides current to all the tracks. So if I had a connecting rail, like right on this side, it would provide power to both of these tracks here, regardless of the position of the derailleur. And this is probably due to the fact that the 7860 can isolate trains on passing lines and sidings, so there's no need to cut power from the points. Additionally, because of how the electric rails are set up, there's a plastic break between the tracks in the center. Without this, opposite polarities would touch each other and short-circuit the track. However, this also means that there's a dead spot for the motor contacts. Fortunately, the two sets of contacts usually negate that, since one set will always touch the metal rails. So if I grab a 12-volt train right here, you can see if I have it like positioned right here, maybe it's a little bit hard to see, but the back set of contacts is over the dead spot, which is like right around here. But the front set of contacts is on the metal, so it's still going to have power supplied to it. That does mean though that you need to make sure that the points are clean, because if the electric rails around the points are dirty, then the contacts can hit a dead spot and then the train will just stop. So again, it's just important that you make sure that all the electric rails are around the dead spot. The plastic block and the metal are clean. Other than those components, there are these plates that are attached to the bottom to resemble sleeper plates. And then each point has 3 sleepers. I'm just attaching them here, but you will need to take them off, and then after you've attached the other rails using the slots in the metal conducting rails, you'll have to use those sleepers to kind of secure them. So, and then for the electric parts, you have to connect it to the transformer, obviously. So I have it plugged in. You can see transformers right here. So I have the point remote right here, and to plug that in, you just plug that in right there, and then you have to secure it with these 2 plates that are included. Then these 2 are from the transformer; those go on the top and bottom. That makes it so that you can't just like pull the remote out, and then you have to connect the wire. And then now it should be working. So if I press the button with the white rectangle, there, it flipped. So now it's working correctly and everything is lined up. There is one problem with the current. So if you have plugged it in incorrectly, so let's say if you flip this plug, then what will happen is if you press the diverging position, it'll go to the through position. If you press the through position button, it will go to the diverging position. And that's a very easy way to fix that. You just flip the polarity of the contacts, because the polarity of the wire, because it's supplying alternate current. It's supplying the opposite current supply that should be happening to it. One other thing to note is that well, it's actually not doing it here, but maybe if the point motor is just a little bit not aligned, if it's not pushed down all the way, you hear that noise. If I hold down this button, it's buzzing a little bit. That's fine. It just means that it's a little bit out of alignment, and when you are pushing the button, then it's the plastic is grinding on plastic, or not grinding, but the plastic is just vibrating against plastic as the electromagnet is trying to activate. In terms of part variants, nearly every part in the set has at least 2 variants depending on the release date of the set. Early sleepers without cable grooves in the bottom were replaced by later ones with cable grooves somewhere between 1980 and 1982. For point variants, the most noticeable difference is the pins in the point motor attachment base. So if I take this motor off, you see in the middle here, there are these 4 Technic pins, and those just slot into the holes in the point motor. These were removed in somewhere between 1982, something like that, because Lego got a lot of complaints that they would just break off. You can see that half of this pin here is actually already broken. It doesn't really affect the functionality it just makes it so that it's a little bit harder to remove the point motor, and the point motor is more secure on there. But I mean, the later ones without the Technic pins are still fine. There's also a couple of very slight variations in the points. So like on the underside, I've noticed that I have a couple of points with different undersides of the conducting rails. So like I have ones with more of these like plastic blocks. I have some with blocks like here, and that makes it more difficult to attach the plates because the blocks are they're preventing them from being attached. And I also have one with a hole like in the sleeper plates just right around here. The sleeper plates have these if you can see that, they have like these nail holes or something here, maybe so that you can secure it to a board with a nail or something like that. I have a point with a hole like that right here, but I don't know why. I only have one like that, but that's just one of the random, very slight differences between these point bases. There's got to be at least 6 to 7 variations across left and right points or something like that. The major difference is those Technic pins in the base, which again can break off and make it a little bit harder to attach and remove the point motor, but other than that, the differences are just very small. Also, the cable can be the early release without a middle pin or the later release with a middle pin. This is an early release of the set, so this cable you can see does not have a middle pin. It just has the two plugs on either. It just has the one plug on either side, but later releases will have the middle pin. And then later remotes will be different from early remotes in 2 ways. So you can see in the first way is that the hole for so it's the same in the point motor and the remote. The hole for the, I don't know if you can see that, but the hole for the plug, the middle hole, it serves no functional purpose, but for the electric connection, but it's a little bit more shallow than later releases, and that's because the early cables didn't have middle pins, so there was no need for this middle hole. So this can plug all the way in here, but if I were to grab a later cable with the middle pin right here, you can see if I plug this in, it won't go in all the way because this is an early point motor, and because the later cables had the metal pins, they made these holes on the point motors and the remotes a little bit, the middle holes were a little bit deeper. But that's just a small difference. And then also the last difference for the remotes is that later remotes will have a different kind of plug hole for another remote to be plugged in. It will look a little bit different, but it works the same. You can use early remotes with later remotes. I already explained how to assemble and use the points, but their functional layout is important as well. One thing to know is that the geometry of these points is different than newer ones. 9-volt and RC points need to have another track piece at the split end to have the main and diverging tracks parallel, and therefore are 3 track segments long. But 12-volt gray arrow points follow the geometry of blue arrow points, so they're only 2 track segments long. Additionally, the distance between the split tracks is 0 studs instead of 8 like the newer points. This means that there are 2 studs of space between trains on tracks next to each other, since tracks are 8 studs wide including sleepers, but the rails and trains are only 6 studs wide. Because of this, you'll have to be a little careful of engines and wagons with large overhangs, since in certain setups they can bump into each other and get stuck. Without points, layouts would be limited to pretty boring circles and ovals. Points allow you to make sidings, switch yards, and more complex layouts. Arranging points like I have them set up right now, you need more straight tracks in between them, but arranging them like that on a standard straight track allows you to create a passing line, and a common use of this is to put a signal on the diverging track to isolate a train. You can use a single point to create a stub end siding, which you can also isolate a train on with a signal. You can make switch yards with several stub end sidings and passing lines, and using a decoupler or 2 makes for a great shunting experience. Of course, the fact that they're remotely operated makes them even more enjoyable to use. Overall, these points allow for many more possibilities in your layout. The 7858 and 7859 boxes had 2 releases, the first with a cardboard outer box and styrofoam inner tray, and the second released in 1989 with different art and a cardboard inner tray. The second variant, like the 7856 box, was also larger. I do have the first version outer boxes, and like the 7750, I've made simple inner trays out of cardboard, which just slot into the outer boxes. There were no instructions for this set in 1980, but in 1981, they may have included point-specific instructions. I don't have the specific instructions for points. Of course, these sets never came with sticker sheets, seeing as there were no stickers. Both of these sets are priced pretty consistently, but typically between $40 and $50. Boxes aren't very rare, so there's not a large difference if you want the box. Sealed copies start at around $80 and can go up to $110 or so. These sets are quite common on eBay and Bricklink, which keeps the price stable. I have 2 copies of each set, and I purchase 1 pair at a time. The first pair I bought for about $35 per point, and they didn't have the box or instructions. The second pair I paid about $50 per point, and I got them with the outer boxes. The second pair also included early part variants. These electric points, along with signals, are what make large layouts possible. Remote control capabilities add realism and functionality to your layout. There is a smart purchase option at any point in your 12-volt journey, and it's nearly impossible to have too many of these sets. That concludes my review of the remote controlled point sets. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe for more content. I'll see you in my next video.